Namaskar. Today we will be continuing with our discussion on channel systems, channel management, logistics and marketing channels, and this shall be part 2 of the topic. We have already discussed part 1 yesterday, and this will constitute as lecture 39 of our course on sales and distribution management. So, yesterday we discussed some concepts under channel management, and we spoke about channel formats, marketing channel systems, channel design, steps involved in channel design, the channel design process, and we also spoke about the selection of channel systems and the evaluative criteria used to decide on channel alternatives and channel systems. We also talked about how should we go about managing channel partners, that is with respect to their selection, their training, their motivation, evaluation and so forth. In today's lecture, which will be part 2 of this topic, we shall be discussing channel management, and we shall also be talking about logistics and marketing channels, and this is lecture 39 of our course on sales and distribution management. So, let us first start with channel management. Now, channel management involves activities pertaining to the creation and maintenance of a trade channel or a distribution channel or a marketing channel, and it includes both the commercial as well as the logistics aspects, and combines the commercial network as well as the logistic network. In yesterday's lecture, we discussed how channel partners play important roles with respect to both the commercial aspect as well as the logistics aspect and the service aspects, and they all need to be integrated to achieve efficiency and effectiveness of the channel. Now, channel design, the first step in channel management process, delineates the number of channel members in a channel network, their linkages between themselves and with the company, the roles and responsibilities as well as tasks and activities to be performed by channel members, and the reward system and the incentive system in place. So, this is what the channel design delineates. Now, what we need to discuss here is channel policies. For effective functioning of a channel, it is important that channel policies are laid out, otherwise it would lead to misunderstandings, it would lead to conflict, and channel policies in fact would provide guidelines for effective and efficient operation of the channel. Now, these policies and guidelines must be very specifically spelled out with respect to the sales territorial coverage, the product assortment to be handled, the pricing policies, the promotion policies, channel management with respect to selection, training, evaluation and reward system for channel partners, channel power as well as channel captaincy. Now, what is channel captaincy? Yesterday I did made mention of a channel captain. One of the members in the channel system, whether it is the producer or the wholesaler or the retailer or the dealers or the stockists, one of the partners assumes more power than the others, and he acts as a channel partner, he acts as a channel captain, and he exercises control over other channel members. So, the channel captain is more powerful, is more dominating, and he exercises influence and control over other channel partners and over other channel members. He is what we refer to as the channel captain. Now, channel management comprises 3 elements: power basis, channel coordination and channel conflict. Let us discuss these one by one. Now, what do we mean by a power basis? If we define power, we say power is the ability of A to have influence over B and make B do something which B would not have done otherwise. Now, why is A able to exercise influence and command B? Is because because A is more powerful, and what makes him more powerful? There is something which A possesses which B cares about, and whatever A possesses is something which is scarce but very important to B. So, this leads to dependency of B over A or on A. So, channel members here, when we are numerous and varied, and they have different needs and expectations and diverse goals and objectives, and this gives rise to issues with respect to power and power dynamics. Now, because channel members have varied interests, they have their own goals and objectives, often contradicting the others goals and interests, it can lead to a situation where some kind of a control has to be exercised by one of the channel partners, so that the activities of the various channel members and channel partners can be coordinated, and things can move in a more smooth manner, operations can be more smooth between the different channel partners. So the question of power comes in picture because of the dependency of channel partners on each other, and this actually with respect to power, it is the extent of dependence which defines the power dynamics between channel partners. So the effective use of power bases helps achieve cooperation and coordination between channel members. Channel members have their own interests, they may have their own needs and expectations, they may have their own goals and objectives, but the fact remains that until and unless they work together, they will not be able to achieve overall organizational goals. They will also not be able to achieve their own goals and objectives as efficiently as if they work together and coordinate with each other together. For this, it is very important that power is exercised, and one of the partners in the channel system needs to exercise power, exercise control over other channel members, so that there is cooperation and coordination between different channel members, and it can lead to effectiveness and efficiency of operations. It can also lead to fulfillment of objectives of whether it is for the manufacturer or the producer, or for the wholesalers and retailers and other channel partners. So all of them would benefit with some kind of a cooperation and coordination with each other, and this is something which can be best achieved through power. So channel members are numerous and varied with respect to needs and expectations and goals and objectives, and this gives rise to power and power dynamics, the issues with respect to power and power dynamics. And the issue of power comes in because of the dependency of channel members on each other, and the extent of dependency defines the power dynamics between the channel members, and this is very, very important that effective use of power bases are emphasized upon, so as to achieve cooperation and coordination between channel members. Now, French and Raven introduced 5 different kinds of power bases, and according to them, power could be a reward power or coercive power or legitimate power or expert power or referent power. These are 5 different kinds of power bases which were introduced by French and Raven, and have become very popular in management. So in management, whether it is with respect to theoretical application or practical application. Now, what do we mean by reward power? The reward power relates to providing incentives for satisfactory performance and for above average performance. Coercive power relates to the use of threat or fear or punishment for poor performance. Legitimate power, as the name goes, emerges from the legal foundations of a contract or from a position which a channel member holds. Expert power is power which emerges out of knowledge and experience of a channel partner, and referent power is the benefits emerging out of association with a reputed brand and a prestigious company actually define referent power. So the effective use of the power bases will help achieve cooperation and coordination between channel partners. With reference to power dynamics, another thing that we need to discuss is countervailing power. Now, with reference to the power equation and the power dynamics between channel partners, we need to elaborate a little on the concept of countervailing power. Now, it may not be always the case that the channel principal or the channel captain has to be the producer or the manufacturer with maximum power. In several cases, another channel member may be more powerful and may exercise power and influence over the channel principal or over the channel captain. So, while a company may have power over its channel partners, the distributor may also assume power which comes through his territorial coverage and his experience and or hold in the market, as well as relationships with customers, which makes the distributor very valuable for the company. So, it is not essential, or it is not always true that it is the channel, it is the producer or the manufacturer who has to be the channel principal or the channel captain. Other members in the trade channel or the distribution channel can also assume more power and can act as channel captains. The next thing that we need to discuss is channel coordination. Now, channel coordination is extremely important for serving customers. As I just said, that when there is a trade channel or marketing channel with numerous channel partners and channel members, they must coordinate with each other so that the different roles, responsibilities, tasks, activities, duties can be performed, and whether it is the commercial part or the logistics part or the service part, everything can be taken care of. All of these aspects can be taken care of in the best possible manner, and the customer would be served more efficiently and effectively if they all work in coordination with each other. So a coordinated channel effort between distribution partners plays a very critical role in creating a huge base of satisfied customers, and it is this coordination between the various channel members, whether it is producers or manufacturer, the wholesaler, the retailer, the stockist, the dealers, etc., which helps ensure that the sales happen and customers are left satisfied post sales. After sales services are properly provided, and there is a loyal base of customers which gets created, so that sales repurchase and sales in future can also be ensured. And so a coordinated channel effort between distribution partners is very critical in creating a base of satisfied customers. So in a channel system, all members must know their roles and responsibilities, as that would help them serve the customer much better, and they would be able to achieve customer service levels in the best possible manner. But in order to achieve an efficient coordinated system, it is important that the interests of the various channel members are kept in consideration, and a win-win situation is created for the company as well as for the distribution partners of the company. As I just said a little while ago, the various channel partners in the distribution network have their own goals and objectives, have their varied interests, and so it's very important that while guidelines are being formulated or policies and procedures are being laid out for efficient functioning of a channel system, it's very important that interests of all the channel members are taken into consideration, so that there is a win-win situation for the various channel members, and all of them help each other achieve their own objectives as well as the organizational objective. The next thing that we need to discuss here is channel conflict. Now, whenever people work together, conflict is bound to occur. As I just said, there are diverse goals and objectives, and perspectives which different channel members hold, and this means that conflict is bound to happen. While small and minor conflicts in the form of disagreements are healthy and functional for an organization, the problem occurs when the conflicts become too intense and severe. And because they become intense and severe, the activities in a distribution network or in a channel get affected adversely, leading to a dysfunctional form of a conflict, which can be damaging to both the channel partners in the distribution network as well as for the company. So when we talk of a conflict, what we mean is a situation of disagreement between channel partners. As I said, conflict is bound to happen because of different motivations of channel members, channel partners, and because each of them want to pursue their own goals. Conflicts also occur on account of lack of clarity with respect to roles, responsibilities, duties, and with respect to goals and objectives, or perceived inequity with respect to distribution of resources. We all know that if in reality resources are always limited, they are always constrained, and any kind of perceived inequity with respect to distribution of resources amongst channel members can lead to feelings of dissatisfaction and unhappiness in the channel partners, which could lead to conflict later on. Conflict also occurs when any channel partner feels less important or exploited, or in case the independence of one of the channel partners is threatened, and then when there is a resource constraint and channel partners are competing with each other for resources. So in all of these cases, what happens is that there is a feeling of discontentment between channel partners, either within themselves or with the company, and this can lead to problems within the distribution network, affecting the channel partners as well as the company in the long run. So, the conflict types here, based on the different reasons which we have discussed, may be categorized as goal conflict, which pertains to the objectives, wherein the channel partners have diverse goals and interests, or they are unclear about the goals and objectives. The domain conflict, which pertains to the roles and responsibilities, and the authority relationships, where the channel partners are not very clear about the kind of roles and responsibilities that they must perform, and also their the issues with respect to power and authority. And then there is perceptual conflict or perception conflict, which pertains to assessment, differences in assessment of market conditions and market trends, competitor strategies, and other environmental occurrences. So, based on the different reasons which we just discussed, the conflict types may be categorized as goal conflicts, domain conflicts, and perception conflicts. Now, conflict in a distribution channel may either occur between the channel members themselves, or between the channel members and the company, and whether it is a goal conflict or a domain conflict or a perception conflict, these conflicts may be further categorized as hybrid channel conflicts, horizontal conflicts, and vertical conflicts. So, what is a hybrid channel conflict? Now, hybrid channel conflict occurs between two channels vying for the same customer or competing for the same customer. For example, a company selling products from their own websites as well as selling through a distribution network. Now, here the company is using two different channels to sell its products, and selling its products through its own website and its own electronic channel, as well as selling it through the distribution network, and both are competing for customers in the same target segment. So, this is what we refer to as a hybrid channel conflict. The second is a horizontal conflict, which occurs between channel members at the same level, which is, for example, one dealer cross-selling into the territory of another or into the adjacent territory. So, this is what we refer to as horizontal conflict. And then we have the vertical conflict, which is channel members at two different levels. For example, a stockist delaying product delivery to the dealer, which means that the dealer falls short of assortment, and so he cannot sell the product or the brand to the customer. So, this is how we will define different kinds of conflicts, whether it is the hybrid channel conflict or the horizontal conflicts or the vertical conflicts. Now, as I said, some kind of a conflict is good for an organization. It is healthy, especially if it is competition, and it is healthy competition, it is functional for the organization. And because it is bound to happen, because conflicts are bound to occur, having this kind of a healthy conflict is not something which should be a cause of worry. However, sometimes conflicts go to assume very severe forms, and that is where it is essential that some measures are taken by the company and by with the distribution partners, so that those forms of conflict can be avoided, or this dysfunctional conflict can be avoided. Now, talking about conflict and the various stages, there are 4 stages of channel conflict: the latent conflict, the perceived conflict, the felt conflict, and the manifest conflict. In the latent conflict, there is some disagreement between channel partners, but this disagreement has not reached a stage where the smooth functioning between partners is getting affected. So, there is some disagreement between channel partners, but it has not yet reached the level to affect adversely the smooth functioning between channel partners. Also, the customer service levels and objectives are not adversely affected. The reasons underlying such conflict are due to miscommunication and misunderstandings, differences in opinions and perception, and divergence with respect to roles and responsibilities and expectations. So, this is what we refer to as the latent conflict. The second is the perceived conflict. Now, in perceived conflict, the disagreement between partners reaches a stage where where the conflict can now be noticed, and the offended distribution partners start displaying their resentment mildly. But again, here the activities do not get affected. Channel partners continue to do their task properly, and so business activities do not get affected. The third is a stage of felt conflict. Now, in this particular stage, the conflict becomes severe. The channel partners start, openly, damaging each other's interests, and the channel partners, they start getting adversely affected. Coordination between channel partners gets disturbed, and one of them tries to get the better of the other. So here the business activities start getting affected, distribution network activities begin to get adversely affected, and so it should be ensured that conflicts are not escalated further, as it would damage the interests of the channel members as well as the company. The fourth stage is the manifest conflict, where now conflict becomes visible, and it takes the form of a dispute. People can observe the kind of differences which channel partners have. They become very explicit. Open confrontation takes place, and in case no proper solution is found, the channel system may need a change. Third party or outside intervention may also be required. So this is here we see in terms of conflict, where there could be different reasons for a conflict, which could be attitudinal sources or structural sources. Attitudinal source causes refer to or relate to the roles and expectations and the perceptions, and the structural sources of conflict relate to the issues with respect to power, autonomy, distribution of resources, etc., which lead to cognitive or affective conflict, and that reaches a stage of manifestation. And during this stage of manifestation, it must be ensured that there are some measures taken to resolve the conflicts, and ultimately once the conflict, if steps are not taken to resolve the conflict, it could lead to dysfunctional outcomes for the organization. What do we mean by functional and dysfunctional outcomes is that when conflict is healthy, for example, in the kind of healthy competition, it leads to higher productivity, it leads to more efficiency and effectiveness, and which means that it is beneficial for the organization. Such a kind of a conflict is referred to as functional conflict. And on the other hand, if the conflict is very severe such that it adversely affects the functioning of the organization and leads to inefficiency and ineffectiveness of operations, are damaging both the interests of the distribution partners as well as of the company, we refer to it as dysfunctional conflict. So functional conflict is healthy and good for an organization. This refers to very moderate kinds of conflicts in the form of minor disagreements, in the form of competition between channel members, and that is something which is encouraged and which should be encouraged in the form of sales contests or sales meetings and contests. But then there is an unhealthy form of competition where one party damages the interests of the other, such that the overall interests of the organization get affected, and also the distribution network and the channel partners get affected. So that is something which is dysfunctional and should be avoided as should be totally avoided. In fact, conflict resolution measures should be undertaken so that the conflict does not reach a stage where it becomes very damaging for the channel partners as well as for the company. So that brings us to styles of conflict management. So based on the assertiveness of a channel partner and the cooperativeness of a channel partner, be it a producer, manufacturer, wholesaler, retailer, dealer, stockist, any of them, we can classify conflict management styles into 5 different types: avoidance, competition or aggression, accommodation, compromise, and collaboration. So based on assertiveness and cooperativeness of the channel members, and these channel members could be any of the entities, whether it is the producer, the manufacturer, the wholesaler, the retailer, the stockist, the dealer, any one of them, based on their assertiveness and cooperativeness, there are these 5 styles from avoidance and competition or aggression, accommodation, compromise, and collaboration. So what do we mean by avoidance? Now in the case of avoidance, the problems or issues which are actually leading to the conflict or which have led to the conflict are not tackled instantly but are postponed for the future. It is mainly used by in cases where channel partners are weak or where the relationship between channel partners are not regarded to be so important or significant that immediate action is required. So in some cases where either because channel partners are weak, they just avoid the channel, the power being exercised or the demand being exercised by the more dominating player, and they keep quiet because they feel that they are weak. And so the problem or the issue is not taken up for consideration, but it is postponed for future. Avoidance is also used in cases where the relationship or the coordination between the channel partners is something which is not very essential and not very important, and the problem, the underlying cause of the conflict or the problem can be postponed for future. The second strategy is competition or regression, where one of the channel partners dominates and dictates the terms and conditions over another, and this is not a good strategy in the long run, as the weaker partners may feel exploited, and it may also so happen that the weaker partners may gradually unite with each other to give later on to give and this would later on give rise to bigger problems. The third style is accommodation, where one party takes the initiative to help the other party achieve its objectives without thinking of its own interests, and there's a huge amount of cooperation between them, a lot of flexibility, and this often leads to the other party also developing similar feelings, because the other party feels obligated, morally obligated, that yes, if the other channel partner is helping me so much, even I must help the other channel partner, and we must both cooperate with each other rather than only one of them cooperating. So the party which takes the initiative to help another party can gradually receive a mutual, can receive a similar treatment from the other party as well. Then the next style is compromise, wherein a middle path is adopted, and both parties decide to let go something, they both decide to sacrifice something, and this is used when conflict is not very severe. And then we have collaboration, which is an effort to create a win-win situation for both the parties, where the both parties, conflicting parties or conflicting channel partners here in our case, decide to get together and work together, and so ultimately what the result is that there is a benefit for both the parties. Now this brings us to the last topic in this particular chapter, which is logistics and marketing channels. Now sales and distribution management relates to the outbound logistics of the company, which is the delivery of the finished goods from the manufacturer to the end consumer, and both sales and distribution management and logistics affect one another. The logistics strategy of a company is based on the distribution strategy, which again is based on the marketing strategy. Now the objective in terms of distribution, or in terms of reaching the end customer, is that there is efficiency and effectiveness in operations and activities, so as to ensure that the right goods reach the right place at the right time and in the right quantity. And a good logistics strategy aims at cost reduction and capital reduction. Now cost reduction relates to reducing the costs of operations. Capital reduction refers to minimizing investments in logistics systems and operations. And whether it is the logistics or the more sophisticated supply chain management, both of them work on the same principle, which is to ensure that the right goods in the right amount reach the right place at the right time and at the right price. And so materials management helps assure successful logistics as well as supply chain management. Now let us talk about what is logistics and how does it get related to distribution management. Now we start with a brief mention of physical distribution, which starts at the factory and involves the delivery of products, finished products, to the final destination. The scope of physical distribution today has broadened into concepts of logistics and supply chain. Now earlier companies were very contented with ensuring that the finished product reaches the end customer, and so the term which was used was physical distribution, which meant that the process starts at the factory, the products are distributed, and the end or the finished product reaches the final destination to the customer. However, it was realized that it is not only the finished product which must reach the end customer on time, but it is also the raw materials and work and work in progress, as well as components, parts, supplies, which must reach the factory at the right time from the vendors and from the suppliers, so that production can happen as on time as planned, and so that the finished product is also ready to be dispatched to the final destination at the right time. So this broadened the scope of the so-called distribution, which was no longer outbound, wherein the finished product must reach the end customer or the final destination, but it was also inbound, where the raw materials, components, parts and supplies or work in progress must reach the manufacturer or the producer from the vendors and the distributors on time. So from the vendors and the suppliers on time. So the scope of physical distribution broadened so as to include both the outbound logistics as well as the inbound logistics, and this led to the scope of physical distribution broadening into concepts of logistics and supply chain management. Now, logistics is a broader term as compared to physical distribution, which involves all the activities ranging from raw material procurement stage to the delivery of the finished product to the customers, including packaging of the product, order processing, inventory management, warehousing and transportation. So it is only through logistics that the goods manufactured reach the location where they are demanded, and they can be further used by the customers. So holistically, logistics is about assuring that the right goods reach the right place at the right time and at the right quantity, and this is the fundamental of the distribution network objective as well. We have been discussing all these days that marketers always are concerned with ensuring that the right product reaches the right customer at the right time at the right place. And so herein we find the relationship between sales and distribution management and logistics. Both go in together. In fact, the Council of Logistic Management defines logistics as the process of planning, implementing and controlling the effective and efficient controlling the efficient, cost-effective flow and storage of raw materials, in-process inventory, finished goods and related reformation from the point of origin to the point of consumption, after the purpose of conforming to customer requirements. So what we see here is that there has to be a cost-effective inflow of material, raw material into an organization, which must be then converted into a product, and then the product also has to be moved or transported from the point of origin to the point of consumption in the most cost effective manner, so that the right product reaches the customer at the right time and at the right price, in the right quantity and at the least cost. So this is where we see that the two principles that the principles of logistics as well as of the distribution network go together hand in glove. And that is how we say that the sales and distribution strategy of the organization is actually should go hand in glove with the logistics and supply chain management practices exercised by the organization. So if we go back and we see the relationship here, that the logistics strategy of a company is drawn from the distribution strategy, which in turn is based on the marketing strategy. The objective is efficiency and effectiveness of operations and activities to ensure that the right goods reach the right place at the right time in the right quantity, and with cost reduction and with capital reduction. So that is wherein we see that how both sales and distribution management and logistics affect one another. Until and unless there is an inbound flow of raw material and an outbound flow of the finished products, the product will not be able to reach the end customer at the right time, at the right place, in the right quantity and at the least price. And if this does not happen, even if the salesperson has put in the maximum of efforts, he will not be able to succeed because the product or the end product will not be able to reach the customer on time and so the customer will be left antagonized and he will not want to continue business with the company. So what we are saying is that a salesperson may put in as much effort as possible. He may be the best performer in his team. He may earn sales volume. He may earn orders. He may have taken orders, but until and unless these orders are fulfilled on time, at in the right quantity, at the right place, things will just not move, and the orders will, even if the orders have been secured, it just takes a minute for the customer to cancel the orders, and all the efforts of the salesperson will go in vain. So even the best of salespersons and his performance and his efforts would be futile if he is not well supported by the distribution network, by the channel partners, and by the logistic strategy of an organization. That is how sales and distribution management and logistics affect each other, and they must both move together. I repeat, a salesperson's efforts goes in vain until and unless the order that he has secured is completed and delivered at the right time, at the right place, in the right quantity, and at the least price. And so it's very important that both the logistical strategy as well as the sales and distribution strategy of an organization move together hand in glove. Now, a little more about logistics and supply chain. Now, supply chain starts before physical distribution and includes procuring the inputs and their conversion into products and sending the final product to the consumer. It integrates the processes of all organizations involved in manufacturing and distributing a product, and involves procuring inputs, which includes raw materials, components and equipment, transforming them into products, and then shipping the products to the final destination. Now, the question that may be asked is that then how do we differentiate between logistics and supply chain? Some people use these two terms synonymously, where they say that both logistics and supply chain are the same. In other cases, a distinction is drawn between logistics and supply chain, wherein it is emphasized that while logistics pertains to the organization, supply chain is broader and it integrates the processes of all the organizations involved in manufacturing and distributing the product. So the horizon of supply chain is broader, while logistics deals with the company, within the company, and the suppliers and distributors in terms of inbound and outbound. The supply chain integrates the processes of the suppliers and the vendors, as well as the dealers and the distributors, and integrates the processes of all the organizations involved in manufacturing and distributing a product. So what are the major decisions in marketing logistics? There are 4 major decisions: order processing, inventory management, warehousing and transportation. Of course, today we see that majority of the activities, whether it is with respect to inventory management or warehousing or transportation, is being very systematically and scientifically done by third-party logistic providers. Let us first start with order processing. Order processing implies how should orders be handled. So this refers to the order to payment cycle, which is securing the order, bill and invoice preparation, packaging and dispatch of the final product. And the objective here is to ensure speed and accuracy of transactions and delivery and receipt of payments, delivery of the product and receipt of the payments. So order processing right from order to payment cycles must be well documented and proper records must be maintained. So this would help reduce order cycle times, reduce lead times, ensure accuracy, and ensure that chances of error are reduced, and there is timely billing and invoicing and receipt of payments. The next is inventory management. Now, inventory management involves decisions related to raw material, work in progress, finished goods that should be stocked, the quantity to be stocked, as well as where they should be stocked. And companies must maintain inventory levels, because a proper inventory management helps meet production requirements as well as customer demand. It helps protect against uncertainty. It matches demand and supply, and so it's very, very important that demand forecasting is done accurately. So major decisions involve how much stock should be held, whether raw material or work in progress and work in process, or finished goods, or MROs, which is maintenance, repair and operating supplies, in transit, pipeline, etc. So, inventory management aims at maintaining optimum stock levels such that there is no understocking or overstocking. While understocking can lead to shortages in the market for the final product, overstocking may increase the storage and carrying cost of products. So, managing inventory involves information sharing, receiving, storing and dispatch of goods, sorting of goods and repackaging if required, transportation, etc. The third is warehousing. Warehousing here, is something which is very, very critical for organizations, and warehousing decisions are extremely crucial because warehousing, can involve a lot of capital investment if these warehouses are owned by the company. Most companies prefer, taking services from warehouse agencies and third-party logistics to take care of their warehousing operations. Now, warehouses act as a hub for receiving products manufactured by a company, storing them and finally distributing the products. So, they store products between point of origin and point of consumption, and they may be used both as a holding point or as a flow-through point, and they help facilitate order processing and consolidation, product mixing, cross-docking, and they help protection of stocks against theft and damages and other damages due to weather conditions. Along with inventory, they help. Along with inventory management, they help manage, they balance the demand and supply, and companies need to make major decisions with respect to the number of warehouses, the capacity, the location and management of warehouses, and where should stocks be stored, and whether they should be owned or rented or maintained by the company. So the companies must take decisions like how many warehouses, what should be the size and capacity, where should they be located, and how should they be managed, whether they should be owned or rented and or maintained by the company. The third is transportation, which requires taking decisions regarding how should goods be carried to their final destination, and so transportation is something which helps wider reach and deeper penetration into markets. The objective again here is to reduce inventory storage time and to ensure faster delivery of products, and transportation decisions must be carefully taken as they have a bearing on the cost factor. So, important decisions that need to be taken are with respect to modes of transport, the choice of carriers and carrier selection, whether it is roll or rail or air or water or pipeline and ropeways. Now, all of these vary in cost, in speed, and the size of consignment that they can handle, and physical distance and spread, geographical reach, transit time, as well as infrastructure needs to be taken into account, and a comparative analysis must be done wherein cost vis-a-vis time to reach the customer must be conducted to determine the best suitable mode. Routing, networking and scheduling are again important issues that need to be addressed so that costs can be reduced, and also the shipment and the consignment size needs to be decided and take accordingly. So, with this we come to an end of our lecture on channel systems. The references are as follows, and this brings us to an end of the 4th lecture on the 8th module of the course. I hope you have found this lecture beneficial. Thank you.